Algebra 1, this is chapter 2.5. This will be the last one before we sit back and evaluate from the beginning of the chapter. This is solving equations involving an absolute value. Guys, did we ever talk about absolute values yet? So if we didn't or we did, what is an absolute value? What does it mean? This is an absolute value right here, right? Absolute value of x. What does that mean? The opposite? It can mean the opposite. The number, guys, how far away from 0, or the distance from 0. Remember, when we talk about going from home to school, you may say you live 5 miles away from school, right? But if I turned it around and I asked you, how far away is your home from school, which is the opposite direction, you guys still would say 5 miles. You don't change it and say it's a negative 5 miles. Because when we're talking about distance and we put a negative on it, that means we're probably moving backwards, right? So yes, it means the distance from 0. So yes, as Mike said, sometimes it's the opposite, and sometimes it is not. If a number is already positive, do I have to make it positive? Or make it the opposite? No. Basically, remember, absolute value turns it positive. Always positive. So, absolute value of 10 is 10. Absolute value of negative 5, 5. And the absolute value of negative 1/2 is a positive 1/2. It doesn't matter if it's a fraction, a decimal, a whole number, an integer, an irrational number. The absolute value of it is always going to be positive.
Always.
Any questions on that?
Always.
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 Now, what we're going to do for the first type of problems that are going to be given to you, it doesn't want you to solve yet. It just wants you to evaluate an expression. This expression, guys, will have not parentheses, but absolute values. So we need to change it. We need to substitute in the values, and then we're going to start to clean it up using our order of operations. So, as we can see in the first problem, we got the absolute value of m plus 6, and then we're going to subtract 14. What is the value of that if m is equal to 4? Well, then I just play coach, right? I put in 4, that's an absolute value, plus 6 minus 14. Do I need the parentheses now around the 4? Not necessarily, right? Because it's 4 plus 6, and 4 plus 6 is, so it's absolute value of 10 minus 14. Be careful, guys, that you don't mix up your absolute value symbol with a 1 or 2 1s. That's not 1101, right? 1101, it's the absolute value of 10. So be careful. I'll try to keep my numbers or things inside the absolute value slightly smaller to make this work. And now you just have to ask yourself, what's the absolute value of 10? Because that's a grouping symbol, and that comes first before subtraction. 10. So I'm just going to replace the absolute value of 10 with 10. And then, what's 10 minus 14? So the answer to this problem is negative 4. Yes, it has an absolute value in it, but overall the answer was negative. That's okay. I evaluated the absolute value where it was needed. Any questions on that? We can do the same thing over here with 23 minus the absolute value of 3 minus 4x. But in this case, x is equal to 2. Notice I use parentheses again. What's the order of operations now? Do I do anything with the 23? Am I going to change the absolute value? Can I just take the absolute value of that whole thing?
Not yet.
Not yet. 3? 3 okay still?
Yeah.
Because order of operations says that I need to do 4 times 2 and not 3 minus 4, right? And what's 4 times 2? Or a negative 4 times 2, which is negative 8. Next thing I need to do?
The absolute value is 3 minus 8.
I am not going to do the absolute value of 3 minus 8. Chuck? I need to do 3 minus 8 first. Remember, or should we say, absolute value symbols act like grouping symbols. 3 minus 8 is? Negative 5. Take the absolute value of negative 5. So it becomes negative 5. Wait. I thought it was supposed to always be positive. So it must be wrong, right? Why am I not wrong? Aaron? Ryan? Sorry.
Because there's a negative number outside the absolute value.
Right. Guys, to properly do this, I need to recognize that there's still a negative outside the absolute value. What I should have done is that I changed the absolute value, I got rid of it, changed it to a positive 5, change your absolute values to a parentheses. This will help you establish that the negative is still outside, and now you can recognize it's 23 minus a positive 5, or 23 minus 5. And 23 minus 5 happens to be, what? 18? And so there's your answer. Thank you. Any questions? Let's think on this, guys. Now we are going to actually solve an equation. What values of x make the statement or the equation of absolute value of x equals 5? What would make that true? What can x be that when you take the absolute value of it, it's 5? Either one. Don't care. It could be a negative 5. Why can it be negative 5? Absolute value of negative 5 is 5. Real.
I was going to say 5 or negative
5 or negative 5, because it can be 5, because the absolute value of 5 is 5. So that means x is equal to 5 or negative 5. Both of those work. So wait a minute. So let's think of this. When I have an absolute value equation, there can be 2 numbers that the inside could be that when you take the absolute value of, that'll end up being the same thing on the outside. Will that always be true? Most of the time. The only other time that would not be true if it equaled, there's only one time that would say that would not equal, it'd be 0. Because the absolute value of 0 is 0. There is no negative 0, right? So 0 is only one solution. Any questions to this? So let's formally put this down on some steps and onto paper. The 2 cases. There are 2 cases, guys. And in bold down there with the asterisks on it, both ends, both cases are needed. It says that for any real numbers a and b, the absolute value of a, if the absolute value of a is equal to b, kind of like what we had for the last problem, and b is greater than or equal to 0. So you can't, think of this, guys. Can an absolute value equal a negative number? Can you have an absolute value of something and it equal negative? No. Because the definition of absolute value makes it positive. So a positive will never equal a negative number. That's no solution. We kind of talked about things like that yesterday, yes? Okay. So we got this idea that if the absolute value of a, it doesn't matter what a is, equals b, and b is 0 or greater, then there's case 1. the expression inside the a value is positive or 0, well then a will just equal b. Think back to our absolute value of x equals 5. If the inside, if x was positive, then the inside would have to equal the outside, straight up. 5 equals 5. It has to equal 5. A or x would have to equal 5. Case 2, guys, is that what happens if the inside of the absolute value is negative? Well, that means the inside part would equal the opposite of the outside. Because when I take the absolute value of that, I end up getting the positive. Maybe a little confusing, but you need both right now. Once we start doing problems, it should shake out a little bit, and you should be able to see it. So let's talk about that first problem. The first problem is y plus 2 equals 4. We're kicking it up a little bit, as you can see. We're not staying with just x or y equals 4, because that's too easy. That's just too easy. So let's deal with case 1. Case 1 says that this middle part will end up being positive. And if the middle part was to be positive, well then it would have to equal the outside part. So, in other words, just drop the absolute value and solve. That has to be true. So, case number 1, you just take the absolute values, pull them away, and solve it. Subtract 2, y is equal to 2. Is 2 plus 2, take the absolute value, 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. Absolute value of 4 is 4. It works. Then you have to say, or the inside part is equal to the opposite of the outside. That's what it's saying up there. The A, which is inside, is either equal to the positive or to the opposite or negative of the outside. And you solve this one by subtracting 2 again from both sides. And y equals negative 4 minus 2, negative 6. How many answers did we just have? We just had 2 answers, 2 or negative 6. Negative 6 plus 2. What's negative 6 plus 2? I'm checking, guys. It's negative 4. What's the absolute value of negative 4? It's 4. It works. They both work. Guys, I'll give you a couple seconds to do part B on your own. Okay, what's the first step, guys? Case 1. Split it up for me. Biggest thing, you just got to split them up and solve. What's the first side? Okay, everyone just was talking. They must be done. Start talking to me now. This is a lot of dead space on this video right now. Gus, what are you saying? Four. I don't want an answer. What's my step? I'm not adding 4 yet. I got to split it first. Logan. So what would that look like? 3n minus 4 equals 5. Yes. Then, Gus, what am I going to do? Add 4. Now we add 4. Guys, you needed to get rid of the absolute values. I don't like the absolute values in there, so let's get rid of them. And so, 3n equals 9. Divide both sides by 3. So n is equal to 3. Has everybody got that? You drop the absolute values, you got 1/2 of the problem right. The other half, Abby's going to tell us. One of them, go. As they look at each other now. Someone give it to me. What's the other half? We're doing that problem, the one we're following, right? Okay. What's the other half look like? You got her. Thank you very much. 3n minus 4 is equal to the opposite of 5. And then, Gus, what are we going to do? Add 4 again. That's why I went back to you. You did the right step last time. Let's do it again. So we get 3n equals -1. Billy, what's next?
Alright, not everybody's Michael Pack back, man.
Okay, Mike, what's next?
What's next? Wait, where are we?
Yeah, that's a problem. Rich, what's next?
-3.
No.
Well, the answer's negative.
Matt. Divide by 3 to both sides, so the answer is not -3.
That's what I said, divide by 3.
You did not. You just said 3.
You didn't hear right. I said
So,
divide by 3.
our answers for the problem are 3 or
negative.
-1/3. Guys, try the next problem. I'll give you about 4 seconds to realize it. What's the big deal on part C? Everybody should know this, as I actually talked about this already. Kathy. Okay, so I take them away. Okay. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Okay. So m equals 2. Kathy, check it for me. Yes. 2 minus 3. -1. Take the absolute value of -1. It's 1. Is that equal -1? No. Oh. What did you do wrong? Guys, Kathy followed the right procedure. She's missing something. She's missing something. Matt. No, it wouldn't make it -m equals. Guys, I hinted at this. Look above where I said that b had to be up here greater than or equal to 0. Why? Can you ever take an absolute value of a number and have it be negative? So guess what? No solution. So, type of a real world problem. I want you guys to find the minimum and maximum temperatures for an enclosure for a pet snake that should be 80 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take 5 degrees.
25 and 80.
So, guess what? 80 degrees is where I want to be, right? So, what if I made this absolute value equation where I don't know my temperature? What if I call that T? My temperature. If I was to subtract 80 from it, sometimes it'll be a positive number, as in I could be 82, 83, 84 degrees, right? If I subtract 80 from it, it'd be positive. It would. If I was 78 or 79, 77 degrees, minus 80 would end up resulting in a negative number.
Is that 1 plus?
Because what we're talking about here is a range. That difference, though, between what I have and what I need to be is 5.
Is that 1 plus -80?
So, we have the absolute value of t minus 80 equals 5. Can you guys see that this equation would give me the maximum and minimums for my enclosure? I didn't need to have an equation for this. Obviously, if it's give or take, It's supposed to be or take, not of take. Give or take 5 degrees. If it's supposed to be 80, if I take 5, then I'm at what? You ate 80 pieces of candy this morning. Give or take 5. If you take 5 more, what are we having? 85. If you give 5, that means 75. So it's easy enough to solve this without the absolute value. But if we use our rules from the other page, that's true, right? Or t minus 80 is equal to the opposite of 5, right? Both cases, I need to add 80 to both sides. And when I do this, t is equal to 85, or t is equal to 75. I get the max and the min values. The easiest way to figure out your range of values, well, in this case, because there's an equal sign, it's not a range. The maximum and minimum values is you always take what you're trying to average out, what you should be. You take that from some value that you happen to find. Okay? We could change the situation over many things. The class average for the last quiz was 80, give or take 5%. It means you take your quiz, subtract 80 from it, take the absolute value, you'll be within a 5-point percentage, yes? That's what it means. That 5% is the difference between maybe your quiz and the average. Something like that. The last one I want you guys to do is to actually write an equation, just like I did. So then, I'm using these steps. I find the midpoint between the points. That's the inside A value. Part 2 says find the distance from that midpoint to the end. One of the ends. That's the B value. And then you place it into the equation of the absolute value of x minus A equals B. All it is, find A, find B, plug it in. Look at my points. I'm at -3 and 1. There's a couple different ways that I could find the center or midpoint of this. Could I add -3 plus 1 and divide by 2? Yes. Or could I just take a step in? Take a step in. Take a step in. Take a step in. Where's the midpoint?
-1.
So what value is that one?
Hey.
It's A. How far away is A to the end?
What do you mean by that?
2 steps, right? So B is equal to 2. What's the equation, guys? Absolute value of x minus -1. Absolute value equals 2. Or we don't like to subtract a negative, we add. So it's x plus 1, absolute value of it equals 2. If you're unsure, guys, check your work. Doesn't that mean that x plus 1 equals 2 and x plus 1 equals the opposite of 2? What happens when I subtract 1? X equals 1 or x equals -3. Are those my endpoints? Yes, it is. Your homework is worksheet 2.5. Have a great weekend.